Is it focused?
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, Reptilians. Welcome and welcome back to the channel. I'm Elle, and this is Elle's Reptiles. This week we are doing a video that one of you guys very specifically asked for, and that is a video about the care of crested geckos. I've already done a couple of crested gecko care guides, so instead, but still along those same lines, we're going to do 10 things that you should know before you get a crested gecko. As you know, crested geckos are my absolute favorite. I love them so much, so I'm excited to do a crested gecko video because I haven't done one in a while. I will not be holding Dexter for the duration of this video because he would be going crazy and jumping and leaping and it would be a nightmare. So instead there'll be Dexter clips interwoven into the video. As is very on brand for a crested gecko video, this week's video is sponsored by I Heart Gecko, so make sure to stay until the end of the video to find out all about this awesome company. Let's get started. The first thing, and a super important thing about crested geckos, is that these guys are nocturnal. That means that they are going to be sleeping the entire day. If you're looking for an interactive animal and you are someone that does not stay up late at night, this animal is probably not going to be the best for you because you're never going to see them. But if you are a night owl, then these guys are fantastic. They are incredibly active at nighttime. Every single night without fail, I hear Dexter just leaping around her tank and falling and running into things because she's very clumsy. But every single night they are so incredibly active, and with them being nighttime creatures, that does mean that they like cooler temperatures as well. So that is a huge positive with them being nocturnal, is that you don't usually need extra heat for them. Along those same lines, these guys are very jumpy. This isn't going to be like handling something like a bearded dragon or a ball python where they're very slow moving. They are easy to handle. Crested geckos are a lizard that are made to jump, and they can jump far and they will jump far. As they get older, they do get a little less jumpy. They kind of slow down a little quicker, but as babies, these guys can go and go and go and go and go, and it's definitely something that you should be watching out for if handling them. But those babies can also be pretty shy, just like most reptiles. These are going to be tiny little babies, and to them you are a giant, so of course they are going to look at you and be pretty unsure until they get used to you, and it is something that you will have to work with them on. My biggest advice here is just putting your hand in the tank a lot, doing it at nighttime when they are awake and they can see you reaching in to give them food or to spray the tank down. Just having your hand in that tank a lot is going to help them gradually get used to your presence. This next one is very important. I get questions about it nonstop, and it is, if you have just brought your baby crested gecko home and it looks like they aren't eating, do not panic. Baby crested geckos eat a very small amount of food. The best way to tell if your baby crested gecko is eating is check the enclosure for poop. If they are regularly pooping, they are eating. And number two, don't fill up their food dish all the way with food. If you do this, you are not going to see if they are eating because they are eating such a small amount. What I did with both my crested gecko and gargoyle gecko, and what I usually recommend to people, is to only put a pretty thin layer of food on the bottom of the dish that you are giving them. And because there's such a small amount there, you're more likely to see if some is missing as opposed to filling it all the way up. So don't panic, just look for waste in that tank, make sure that they're not losing weight, obviously, and just give them less food and they probably are eating. Tail loss. Crested geckos can lose their tails, and it is very, very common for them to lose those tails. And a crested gecko's tail, unlike a leopard gecko or gargoyle gecko's tail, does not grow back. Once it is gone, it is gone. However, it is perfectly normal and very, very common for them to drop their tails. These guys sometimes drop their tails because they scare themselves, and it is not a means of panic. Some people even prefer crested geckos without tails because then you don't have to worry about the stress of them losing their tails again. But yeah, just know that it is normal, it is natural, it happens quite a lot. It won't grow back, but they're still gonna be super adorable little geckos even if they don't have those tails. A diet of solely baby food is not going to be sufficient for a crested gecko. When I first got my crested geckos, I didn't even think that this was a thing that people did, but apparently it is a thing that people do. Crested geckos are relatively new to the reptile hobby, especially when compared to things like bearded dragons. And when they were first introduced, the diet that they were regularly fed was fruit baby foods and insects, and that was their entire diet. Now, since we do know more about these guys, we know what vitamins they need, we know all these things, the best base of their diet is going to be pre-made gecko foods. Those gecko foods include vitamins and minerals, and the fruits that they enjoy, a lot of them even include insects in that mixture. That is going to be the best base. And then of course you can feed your crested gecko insects too, but Feeding them solely baby fruit foods is not a sufficient diet, and it is not a healthy diet for these guys. This next one is not a necessity, but it is just helpful for them, and that is getting their food off of the ground. Crested geckos are arboreal. They like to climb, they are built to climb, and because of that, they prefer their food to be up off of the ground. Having a feeding ledge that is higher, that they can easily access, is much more comfortable for them to eat on, usually, than having it on the ground, because a lot of crested geckos just don't go to the ground most of the time. Also, by having it off the ground, you don't have to worry about substrate getting into the food and them ingesting that substrate. If that is a worry that you have, that worry is gone once you get that food dish off of the ground. It is pretty rare that crested geckos will drink water out of water dishes. They usually get their water off of leaves, so spraying down the tank is super important for these guys. They need humidity, and they also will, again, drink the water off of those leaves. You can provide a water dish for your crested gecko. Just don't get discouraged if you never see them drinking out of it, because they're probably getting their water off of the leaves or off of the glass, the water droplets that collect on the glass. So just wanted to throw that out there. Dexter used to drink out of her water dish when she was a tiny baby, and then she just kind of stopped and she just didn't do it anymore. Now she's regularly seen drinking water off of the leaves or off of the side of the glass of the tank. That's how she just prefers to get all of her water. Speaking of them needing the tank sprayed down, speaking of humidity, humidity is definitely your friend, but stale air isn't. And what I mean by that is you need to spray down the tank. It needs to be kept at a pretty high humidity, but it also needs ventilation. Having a high humidity in an enclosed space with no ventilation is going to cause it to get stuffy, and that's what causes mildew and mold to grow, and that is going to become an unsafe environment for that animal very quickly. So make sure you are spraying down that tank regularly. Also make sure that tank can breathe. Make sure you are letting some of that water dry out occasionally. It's not just mud all the time. Make sure your tank does have ventilation. Just make sure that there is airflow in the tank and that it's not at 100% humidity all of the time. So the last one is that loose substrate is very helpful, and it's pretty necessary. With a lot of reptiles for a very long time, all loose substrate was just deemed bad, so people were concerned about putting loose substrate into their crested geckos' tanks. And loose substrates that hold humidity is helpful for these guys because, again, they do need humidity. And of course, one way that people do keep the humidity up in those tanks is doing bioactive tanks. For a bioactive tank, you need loose substrate. You do not have to worry about having loose substrate in that tank. It is not going to impact your crested gecko, especially because, like we talked about before, their food dishes are usually up off of the ground anyway, so they're not just ingesting the substrate with their food. If you are feeding them bugs, you can put them in an elevated food dish. You can put little baby dubia roaches in an elevated food dish, or black soldier fly larvae, or wax worms, whatever bugs you're feeding them. Even if you are feeding them crickets to hunt, the crickets are going to climb. The amount of substrate that they are going to ingest when eating something like a cricket, if they ingest any at all, it's going to be a very tiny amount. The substrate is going to help you keep that humidity in the tank up. It's going to be a little bit more sanitary than napkins that can grow mold and mildew if they're left wet and enclosed for too long. It's just going to help you out, and it's going to make their tank a little bit more naturalistic. But that is all. That is all that I have for this quick little 10 tips video. Leave your tips for crested geckos down in the comments below, because you might help someone else out that is about to get a crested gecko or who has just gotten a crested gecko. As I said at the beginning of this video is sponsored by iHeartGeckos. iHeartGeckos is such a wonderful company that makes conversion kits for tanks that you may have laying around or that you may have gotten super cheap, and they are super affordable conversion kits, so you can make an overall affordable front opening tank for your animals. They're super fantastic. They're super high quality. I have them here as a sponsor often because I really like this company and I really like their products. If you are looking for an affordable way to make a large front opening enclosure for an arboreal animal, there's also some for terrestrial animals as well. Maybe try out iHeartGeckos because their products are fantastic. If you do happen to order one of these, make sure to leave Elle's Reptiles in the How'd You Hear About Us box. That way they know that you guys are coming from here. Thank you so much to iHeartGeckos for continuing to partner with us here on Elle's Reptiles. As always, if you have not already, please feel free to follow me on my socials and like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications every single time I put in a video, which is every Sunday. And some Wednesdays. We do some shorts on some Wednesdays, so yeah. This week's Instagram shoutout is here, and this week's subscriber shoutout is here. Thank you guys both so much for liking and following and commenting and subscribing and sharing and all of that jazz. You are the bee's knees. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye. Good morning, Reptilians. Welcome and welcome back to the channel. This week, Actually, my hair is messed up. It's super flat. I've already done a Crested Gecko. I've already done. That means that they are going to only be active at. That means that every single night she is so incredibly active. As they get older, the diet that they were fed was baby foods. They usually get their yeah. This week's Instagram